4 thrusters failed, then 5, then 6. Commander Butch Wilmore lost control of Starliner just meters from the ISS, violating every safety rule in the book. Houston made a desperate call. Waive the abort protocol. What happened next almost killed 2 astronauts, and NASA buried the truth for nearly a year. Welcome to Space Update 24 Hours. The data just leaked reveals Starliner lost 6-axis control in orbit. Engineers called it horrifying. So why is Boeing preparing to fly it again? Let's dive right in. November 24th marked a turning point nobody saw coming. NASA quietly rewrote its contract with Boeing, slashing Starliner's mission count from 6 flights down to just 4. The remaining 2, labeled as possible, but wrapped in so much uncertainty they might as well be fictional. The first mission, Starliner 1, won't even carry humans, just cargo, launching no earlier than April 2026. Only after that test will Boeing attempt what many consider the ultimate gamble. 3 crewed flights, 1 astronaut at a time. Does that sound like confidence to you? Or does it sound like an agency trying to minimize casualties if something goes catastrophically wrong? But here's what makes this truly disturbing. Both of Starliner's previous uncrewed test flights suffered thruster malfunctions. NASA knew the propulsion system was unreliable. They knew the fixes were incomplete. Yet they still greenlit a crewed mission. Why would they do that? What pressure, what deadline, what political calculation was worth risking human lives? Let's go back to that mission, because what happened up there rewrites everything we thought we knew about spaceflight safety. Day 2 of the mission. Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams were approaching the International Space Station along the V-bar, the invisible velocity vector trailing the outpost. This is the most delicate phase of any docking, where every thruster pulse matters, where precision isn't optional. Then, without warning, 1 thruster went dark. Wilmore switched to manual control. Seconds later, a 2nd thruster failed. Starliner was now down to single fault tolerance. 1 more failure and they'd lose the ability to maneuver in all 6 degrees of freedom: forward, backward, up, down, left, right, plus yaw, pitch, and roll. The flight rules were crystal clear at this point. Abort, turn around, come home. But here's the nightmare scenario nobody talks about. Coming home meant relying on those same failing thrusters to survive re-entry. Stay or go. Both options could kill them. Then a 3rd thruster died, then a 4th. All aligned in the same direction, 2 underneath, 1 along the port side. Wilmore had lost 6-axis control. The spacecraft couldn't move forward properly. The controls felt sluggish, unresponsive. At that moment, hundreds of meters from the ISS with a crippled spacecraft, Wilmore said something that still sends chills down the spines of everyone who heard it. "I don't know if we'll be able to get back to Earth. I think we probably won't." Think about that for a second. An experienced astronaut, a test pilot, a commander who's seen it all, genuinely believed he was going to die up there. What does it take to break a man like that? They made a decision. Their best chance of survival was to dock, seek shelter on the ISS, and let ground teams figure out what the hell went wrong. In Houston, Flight Director Ed Van Cise faced an impossible choice. Follow the rules and abort, potentially killing the crew during re-entry with failed thrusters. Or waive every safety protocol they had and pray the spacecraft held together long enough to dock. He chose to waive the flight rules. It was courage. It was desperation. It might have been both. But to restart those dead thrusters, mission control needed Wilmore to do something that defies every pilot's instinct. Let go of the controls. Completely. While drifting toward a space station, traveling at 17,500 miles per hour. 1 wrong move and Starliner could collide with the ISS, catastrophically depressurizing modules, potentially killing everyone on board both vehicles. "Hands off," Wilmore radioed. His voice was steady, but you could hear the tension underneath. Houston sent the reboot command. The flight computer cycled. 2 thrusters sputtered back to life. For a brief moment, they were back to single fault tolerance. Then, as if mocking their relief, a 5th thruster failed. They tried again. 1 more restart. 1 more roll of the dice. Miraculously, all but 1 thruster came back online. It was just barely enough. Wilmore handed control back to the automated system. Starliner, battered and barely functional, completed its final approach and docked. Houston erupted in cheers. Suni Williams smiled, a brief flash of joy and relief. But Wilmore knew better. He later admitted, "I didn't think we could do it. I was hopeful, but it was going to be really hard to get to the point where we could say, yeah, we can come back." That night brought a different kind of hell. The capsule, designed for 4 people but carrying only 2, turned into an icebox. Temperatures dropped to 50 degrees Fahrenheit, maybe colder. Wilmore and Williams floated through the cabin in their bulky suits and boots, their breath fogging the frozen air. But the physical cold was nothing compared to the psychological weight pressing down on them. They were trapped. 9 months in orbit, waiting, watching, unable to speak the full truth about what they'd endured. And here's where it gets political, whether NASA wants to admit it or not. Elon Musk publicly revealed that he'd offered to bring the astronauts home earlier, using SpaceX's Dragon spacecraft. He claimed the Biden administration declined for political reasons. NASA denied it. The astronauts denied it. But the damage was done. Public confidence shattered. Butch Wilmore, ever the professional, refused to comment out of respect for NASA and the administration. His silence spoke volumes in an age where everyone has an opinion about everything. But why did NASA stay silent about the true severity of the crisis for so long? Days turned into weeks before the public learned the astronauts wouldn't be returning on Starliner. The most critical details remained buried under vague reassurances and carefully worded press releases. It felt like a cover-up, and in many ways, it was. They were trying to sell confidence they didn't actually have. Then in April, Ars Technica published a bombshell report. The real story finally surfaced. Engineers analyzed the telemetry data and came to a horrifying conclusion. Starliner had come within seconds of total loss of control. The spacecraft's roll and lateral axes were collapsing. They lost control of 6 axes simultaneously. One analyst called it the worst possible failure without deaths. Another simply wrote, Jesus. Boeing had profoundly messed up, but so had NASA for allowing it to happen. Now they want to try again. Boeing is preparing Starliner for certification. NASA is publicly stating they're ready to trust it with astronauts. But behind the scenes, the truth tells a different story. Luke Delaney, an astronaut originally slated to train for Starliner 1, was quietly reassigned to SpaceX's Crew 13 mission. Other astronauts trained for Starliner have been moved to Dragon flights. Does that sound like confidence? Or does that sound like an agency hedging its bets, making sure their people don't end up on a spacecraft that nearly killed the last crew? The question isn't whether Starliner can be fixed. The question is whether it should be trusted at all. This isn't just about contracts or corporate partnerships or maintaining competition in the commercial crew program. This is about human lives. 2 astronauts nearly died because NASA and Boeing pushed forward despite knowing the propulsion system was fundamentally flawed. How many more chances does a failed spacecraft get before we stop calling it bad luck and start calling it negligence? So here's what NASA isn't telling you. They're moving forward with Starliner certification, not because the spacecraft is ready, but because abandoning it now would mean admitting they wasted billions of taxpayer dollars on a fundamentally broken system. It's about saving face, protecting contracts, and maintaining the illusion of choice in America's commercial crew program. But the engineers know the truth. The astronauts know it too. That's why they're being quietly reassigned to Dragon missions. That's why the crew manifest keeps shrinking. That's why the first mission is cargo only, a last-ditch test to see if this thing can even function without killing someone. Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams survived by sheer luck and the skill of mission control. They spent 9 months in orbit reliving that nightmare, then came home and thanked everyone like nothing happened. That's professionalism. That's courage. But it's also a warning we're choosing to ignore. Starliner almost killed 2 astronauts because NASA greenlit a mission they knew was dangerous. The data was there. The failures were documented. They flew anyway. Now they want to do it again. The real question is, who's willing to be next? What do you think? Should NASA ground Starliner permanently, or does Boeing deserve another chance? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this story shocked you, hit that like button and share this video so more people know what really happened up there. And subscribe to Space Update 24 hours For more uncensored space news they don't want you to hear, we'll keep digging, we'll keep reporting, because the truth matters, even when it's terrifying.